Order, please. Before we begin the daily routine, the honourable member for Richmond on introduction, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ça me fait plaisir aujourd'hui, au nom de mon collègue de Clare qui ne peut pas être ici avec nous, qui est avec le Premier ministre et mon autre collègue de Cape Breton South à Sydney pour l'annonce aujourd'hui sur les tar ponds. Ça me fait plaisir d'introduire et d'inviter les 30 étudiants de l'école secondaire de Clare qui sont ici avec nous dans la galerie de l'Ouest. Ils sont accompagnés par Marie-Claude Robichaud et Jeanne Landry et leur enseignante Andrea Burke. Ils sont ici en visite à la ville d'Halifax aujourd'hui et j'espère qu'ils vont apprendre et apprécier comment que l'Assemblée législative prend place et puis qu'ils vont avoir une meilleure appréciation pour les travaux qui sont faits par tous les députés ici à l'Assemblée. Mr. Speaker, it's with pleasure on behalf of my colleague from Clare, who is with the Premier and my colleague from Cape Breton South in Sydney today for the tar ponds announcement, to introduce 30 students from grades 11 and 12 from l'École secondaire de Clare in the riding of Clare. They're joined by Marie-Claude Robichaud and Jeanne Landry and their teacher, Andrea Burke. They're in the West Gallery and they're visiting the city today, and I hope they'll have a better appreciation of how the House of Assembly works and the work done by the MLAs. And I would ask them to rise and receive the warm welcome of the members of the House.
Certainly welcome guests to the gallery today and hope they enjoy the proceedings. Any further introductions? Begin the day routine presenting reading petitions. The honourable member for Halifax Fairview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to table a petition, the operative part of which reads as follows. We, the undersigned, call on the Ham government to withdraw Clause 46 of Bill 62 in favour of an extensive round of discussions with NSGEU and CUPE that will conclude by the end of 2004 about longer-term solutions to the funding problems of the plan and the possibility of joint governance or trusteeship. There are 38 names on this petition. I understand there are more to come, and as required, I have affixed my name to the petition.
The petition is tabled. Presenting report. Petitions. Presenting reading petitions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a petition. We, the undersigned residents of the communities of Sweetland and Farmville, are petitioning for much-needed improvements to our road. It has been sorely neglected for too many years. It is therefore respectfully requested that this matter be looked into and appropriate action taken. Mr. Speaker, I have affixed my name to the petition for the purpose of tabling. Thank you.
Petition is tabled. Presenting reports of committees. Table reports, regulations, and other papers. The Honourable the Deputy Premier.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to table the surplus Crown property disposal report for the period April 1, 2003, March 31, 2004.
Report is tabled. The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table the annual report for 2003, the Nova Scotia Real Estate Commission.
Report is tabled. Statements by ministers. Government notice of motion. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day to move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 2004 marks the 400th anniversary of the first permanent European settlement in North America and the founding of l'Acadie, and whereas in honor of this historic occasion, Premier John Ham proclaimed 2004 as l'année de l'Acadie, and whereas today marks the beginning of 3 days of festivities at École Rockingham School in recognition of the significant contributions Acadians to our province and to celebrate the Acadian heritage of many of its students. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate the students, teachers, and administrators of École Rockingham and their parents and community for their efforts to recognize the importance of Acadian culture and heritage and wish them much success in their festivities. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I read this today on behalf of my colleague, the Minister of Health Promotion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that at a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas volunteers across this province play an integral role in supporting young Nova Scotia athletes, And whereas yesterday we announced 18 volunteers who will serve as the mission staff for Team Nova Scotia at the 2005 Canada Summer Games in Regina. And whereas Nova Scotia has the only fully volunteer mission staff in the country and has twice won the Claude Hardy Award for its exemplary game spirit, therefore be it resolved that all members of this House applaud the commitment of these volunteers as they strive to give our athletes the experience of a lifetime at the 2005 Games. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that at a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas for 100 years, the Sisters of St. Martha have served patients at St. Mary's Hospital in Inverness, St. Rita's Hospital in Sydney, St. Joseph's Hospital in Glace Bay, and at New Waterford Consolidated Hospital, working in every capacity, from nursing to running the hospital switchboards. And whereas this weekend, the people of Cape Breton will recognize the significant contributions the Sisters of St. Martha have made to the people of Cape Breton Island with a tea at Mount Carmel Auditorium in New Waterford. And whereas in June, Sister Marie Kelly, the last of the Sisters of St. Martha working in a Cape Breton hospital, will retire, thus ending an era. Therefore be it resolved that the members of this House join me in expressing our heartfelt appreciation to the Sisters of St. Martha for 100 years of tremendous support, dedication, and care for so many Cape Bretoners who have found themselves in times of need and requiring medical assistance. Mr. Speaker, I seek waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Introduction of bills. Notice of motion. The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Department of Environment and Labour has distributed their guide for private well owners, in which it advises to take care when using any chemicals on your property near your well, and whereas it also advises to never mix or use pesticides, fertilizers, herbicides, degreasers, fuels, or other pollutants near your well, and whereas under the proposed guidelines for spreading of biosolids, the separation distance from spreading to a private well is only 90 meters, and distance to public well is only 150 meters. Therefore be it resolved that the Department of Environment and Labour go back and take a second look at their recommended separation distances for spreading biosolids from wells and draw up regulations, not just guidelines. And Mr. Speaker, ask for waiver and passage without debate.
There are several noes. Noes tabled. The Honourable Member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas today it was announced that funding of $400 million will be provided to clean up the Sydney tar ponds. And whereas this is an indication that government is finally prepared to act in cleaning this toxic environmental and health problem. And whereas this is most welcome for not only the citizens of Cape Breton, for all of Nova Scotians who have been concerned over the years about the hazardous effects this contaminated site has had on the environment. Therefore be it resolved, the members of this House congratulate both the provincial and federal governments, along with the volunteer citizen groups who came together to clean up this mess once and for all. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Kings North.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 41 Nova Scotians participated in the Canadian Special Olympic Winter Games that were recently held in Prince Edward Island, and whereas Kentville resident Philip Brown made an excellent showing in the areas of speed skating, winning 1 gold, 1 bronze, and 3 silver medals, and whereas Mr. Brown has won 47 medals in the 11 years he's participated in the Canadian Special Olympics. Therefore be resolved that the members of this House congratulate Philip Brown on his success at the 2004 Canadian Special Olympic Winter Games and wish him much success in his future athletic endeavours. I request waiver.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Cole Harbour for passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Peter Hogg is the foremost constitutional legal scholar in Canada, having written the defining text on various Constitution Acts. Whereas Peter Hogg has an illustrious career as a law professor at Osgoode Hall Law School, including a term as dean of the school. Whereas Peter Hogg is retiring from his professorship at Osgoode Hall Law School, therefore be it resolved that this House recognize the contributions of Peter Hogg to constitutional law in Canada and wish him all the best in his retirement. And I ask for waiver, Mr. Speaker.
Request for waivers, is agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the International Council of Nurses since 1971 has celebrated International Nurses Day on May the 12th, and whereas this year's theme of International Nurses Day is Nurses Working with the Poor Against Poverty, and whereas the Canadian Nurses Association, which represent nurses from Nova Scotia and indeed throughout our country, are organizing events on International Nurses Day and National Nursing Week relating to mental health and primary health care, therefore be it resolved that all members of the legislature take yet another opportunity to extend our appreciation to our nursing workforce here in Nova Scotia for the role they play in advancing social justice and for improving the health and well-being of Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waivers, is agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Eastern Shore.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Eastern Shore Minor Hockey Tournament took place at the Eastern Shore Community Centre in Musquodoboit Harbour from April 3rd to April 10th, and whereas Oyster Pond Jador resident Nathan Whitty scored 3 of the 4 goals scored by his team during the final game of the tournament, and whereas this was my nephew's first season playing hockey in his new home, therefore, it be resolved that the members of this House congratulate all participants in the Eastern Shore Minor Hockey Tournament and recognize the exceptional efforts of Nathan Whitty at this tournament. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice. Thank you.
Question for waivers, is agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the town of Middleton boasts one of the highest per capita populations of seniors in the province, and whereas the area surrounding Middleton, with a population of 36,000 people, does not have a long-term care facility, and whereas the Middleton and Area Nursing Home Society has seen the need for a nursing home in their community, and volunteer members have been working hard to raise this issue with the provincial government. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this House congratulate the members of the Middleton and Area Nursing Home Society for their tireless efforts on behalf of seniors in their community. Mr. Speaker, I seek waiver and passage without debate.
Request for waivers, is agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Nova Scotians are encouraged to take part in events to mark Police Week held this week from May 9th to the 16th, and whereas events put on by various police agencies from across Nova Scotia help forge stronger partnerships with the communities they loyally serve, and whereas police forces along with community groups have arranged special activities and displays that promote enhanced public safety and security, therefore be it resolved that all members of this House pledge their support for all those involved in Police Week who help to build better and stronger relationships between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve. Mr. Speaker, I would ask for a waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Waivers, is agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Chester St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that at a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Jason Rafuse of Chester Basin has been named to Canada's Special Olympic team, and whereas Jason will be traveling to Nagano, Japan in February of the new year to compete at the World Winter Games in snowshoeing, and whereas more than 2,500 athletes from 80 countries will arrive in Nagano for competition. Therefore, be it resolved MLAs commend Jason for his extensive training and will to participate at the world level, while knowing that residents and staff at Bonnylee Farm are ecstatic about Jason's participation. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cape Breton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll be doing this on behalf of the member from Cape Breton Nova. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Canadian Student Debating Federation National Debating Seminar was held in Winnipeg on April 26th to 30th, and whereas Sheldon McCormick, a grade 10 student at Sydney Academy, captured top prize at this prestigious scholastic event, and whereas the seminar not only provided the students an opportunity to attend workshops and debating sessions, it also proved to be quite an educational experience. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this Legislative Assembly congratulate Sheldon McCormick for winning the top prize at the Canadian Student Debating Federation National Debating Seminar and for his commitment and outstanding work ethic in striving to achieve scholastic excellence. I seek waiver, Mr. Speaker.
Request for waiver is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Thomas Aquinas Centre has provided specialized educational programming for over 300 children with attention deficit disorder and other learning difficulties, and whereas children at the Thomas Aquinas Centre have achieved success, children have regained their self-confidence and returned successfully to the public school system, and 26 children have graduated from grade 12 to continue their studies and contribute in a meaningful way to the community. And whereas Penny Doherty, principal and founder of Thomas Aquinas Centre, will terminate her passionate and powerful endeavour after 9 years, therefore be resolved that all members of the legislature congratulate Penny Doherty and her staff for their excellence in special education and wish them well with their Lupin benefit dinner and auction today. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas without a doubt Nova Scotia is one of the world's best-kept motorcyclist secrets, and whereas Harold and Wendy Nesbitt of Waverley just completed their printing and production of their 4th edition of the Motorcycle Tour Guide of Nova Scotia, and whereas Harold and Wendy recently won their 2nd Award of Excellence in the 2003 edition at the 2004 North American International Motorcycle Show. Therefore, be it resolved that MLAs applaud the fabulous efforts of Harold and Wendy Nesbitt, who are striving to bring more tourism to Nova Scotia and having a great time while they're at it. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Hants East.
I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas volunteerism is the fine concept of humankind that reaches out to the most vulnerable, and whereas those who are facing their last days should not walk the dark road alone, and whereas on Volunteer Awards Night, April 21st, 2004, Ms. Audrey White was honoured by the municipality of East Hants for her work with the East Hants Palliative Care Unit. Therefore, be it resolved that this House of Assembly congratulate Audrey White for choosing to help ease the burden of the dying and to remind us all of our mortality and its needs. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax, Clayton Park.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas volunteers and community workers are the backbone of society, and whereas Wadia Ferris, Ron Boomer, Albert Nicole, and Michelle Vigée-Fraser have spearheaded the Halifax Mainland North Volunteer Recreation Committee to honour those individuals who consistently go the extra mile to improve our community. And whereas these individuals have worked together to organize the first annual Volunteer Awards Dinner to ensure that our outstanding volunteers receive the recognition they deserve, therefore be it resolved that the members of this House congratulate the Halifax Mainland North Volunteer Recognition Committee for a successful event and for the work they have done to honour those in our community who have truly made a difference. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Raymar Construction took on the task of repairing the Beacon House Caretaker House in Sackville, which will have its grand opening tomorrow, May 13th, 2004, And whereas Raymar Construction, their many suppliers, provided all of the labor and material free of charge, a very generous donation indeed to the families in need in Sackville area and surrounding communities. And whereas both Ray Marchand and Kevin Marchand, owner and operator of Raymar Construction, decided to do this work free of charge because they recognized the need to have Beacon House Caretaker House repaired. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House thank Ray and Kevin Marchand, their many suppliers, for their unwavering generosity to the community. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the municipality of Pictou County was incorporated in 1879, and so this year is celebrating its 125th anniversary, and whereas municipal government is the first level of government in this country and the one that is closest to the people it serves, and whereas Warden Alistair MacDonald and councillors from 13 other districts, along with County Chief Administrative Officer Clyde Purvis and staff, are to be commended for operating a very efficient municipal government. Therefore, it be resolved that this legislature congratulate the municipality of Pictou County on their 125th anniversary and wish them much success during their celebrations. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Request for waiver is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary amendment nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Kings North.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas each year the Better Business Bureau of the Maritimes awards community achievement awards to businesses that are active within the organization and the community. And whereas this year longtime Better Business Bureau member DM Reed Jewelers of Kentville received the award for the Valley South Shore region. And whereas the business supports an impressive number of community organizations such as the Acadia Axemen, the Kentville Rotary, the Valley Regional Hospital Foundation, Kinsmen and Canets, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Ducks Unlimited, and the Apple Blossom Festival, to name just a few. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this House congratulate DM Reed Jewelers owner David Reed on receiving the Better Business Bureau Community Achievement Award for the Valley and South Shore, and express to him our great appreciation for all the support he continues to give to so many organizations in the community. I request waiver.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Dartmouth South Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the policies of the Department of Community Services prevent employment support and income assistance clients from retaining their benefits while attending college or university programs over 2 years in duration, and whereas this backwards and unjust policy forces single parents, the majority of whom are women, to choose between feeding their families and obtaining higher education, and whereas the lack of a university education continues the poverty cycle, forcing single parents into lower-paying jobs and a continued struggle to make ends meet. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House condemn this policy of the Department of Community Services and call on the Ham government to reverse this discriminatory policy immediately. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver and passage without debate.
Mr. Waiver, here several noes. Notice is tabled. The honourable member for Pictou East on an introduction and a resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I'd like to do an introduction first. With us,
Order, please.
With us in our East Gallery.
Order, please. The honourable member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With us in our East Gallery today, we're fortunate to have grade 5 and 6 students from the A.G. Bailey Memorial Elementary School in the Glasgow, grades 5 and 6, 25 students, and that's the school band who played for our listening enjoyment prior to the House opening today. With the students are Jim Wasson, school band conductor, Denise Graham, Allison Shaw, my old swim partner from the Glasgow, Mamie Anderson, Michelle McDougall, and Nancy Diggs. And also Bob Grant is with them today, and I'd ask them all to stand and receive a welcome of the House. For the swimming partner, yeah.
Swimming. We certainly welcome our special guests to gallery today and hope they enjoy the proceedings. The honourable member for Pictou East on the introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to read a resolution on behalf of the Premier, John Ham. Mr. Speaker, I give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the students of A.G. Bailey Elementary School Intermediate Band have studied and practiced tirelessly throughout the year with the continuous support of their parents, represented here today by the President of the Band Parent Auxiliary Association, Ms. Nancy Dix. And whereas the students have benefited from the constant tutelage and encouragement of their devoted band teacher, Mr. Jim Lawson. And whereas our government has established Nova Scotia's first music strategy in consultation with the Music Industry Association to highlight our province's musical talent, therefore be it resolved that members of the House acknowledge the time and effort that have been invested by the students, their parents, and their teachers, and applaud the A.G. Bailey Memorial Elementary Intermediate Band for their wonderful performance. And Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice, passage without debate.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax, Shabakto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll be seeking waiver. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas student model parliaments are a popular and educational activity in our high schools, and whereas the students of St. Patrick's High School in Halifax, Shabakto held their annual model parliament on May 10th and 11th, 2004, and whereas their guest in the role of Governor General was the MLA for Halifax, Shabakto, therefore be it resolved that this House congratulates the students and staff of St. Patrick's High School for an ambitious and interesting 2004 model parliament. Mr. Speaker, I seek waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas without the continued efforts of food banks throughout the province, many families would not be able to put food on the table. And whereas St. John's Anglican Church in Fairview holds the weekly Halifax West Ecumenical Food Bank, which distributes over 82 tons of food a year. And whereas the volunteers at this food bank served over 4,531 families in the last year, providing a tremendous service to the community. Therefore be it resolved, the members of this House acknowledge the service provided by the Halifax West Ecumenical Food Bank and recognize the contributions made by the many volunteers to this project. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas of Canada's 31.6 million people, the last census indicated that only 3,795 were living at the age 100. And now of those 3,795, 165 of those were residing right here in Nova Scotia. And whereas Gladys Bauer from Upper Ohio's Shelburne County has been on the list for 6 years after celebrating her 106th birthday last Saturday afternoon during an open house, and whereas Gladys is still residing at home and cooking her own meals the majority of the time and living life to the fullest. Therefore be it resolved, MLAs congratulate Gladys not for just another birthday, but for her 106th birthday and wish her many more years of health. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Ross Creek Centre for the Arts in Annapolis Valley has recently completed Phase 1 of an ambitious project to build a multi-use community centre, whereas the Ross Creek Centre plans on hiring 20 people this summer to teach, perform, and conduct maintenance at the facility, whereas the centre was able to leverage $100,000 in funding from economic development to complete Phase 1 and is now turning its attention to Phase 2. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House congratulate the volunteers and staff at the Ross Creek Centre for the Arts on this major accomplishment, and that this government commit itself to exploring possibilities for further financial support for Phase 2. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Riverport Elementary School holds its annual spring fair to raise funds for the benefit of students who attend the school. Whereas the annual event is looked forward to by the community and received support this year from the Riverport and District Fire Department, 143rd Airfield Engineering Squadron, and Midlife Crisis, who assisted in making this year's event an overwhelming success. And whereas the proceeds from the spring fair are used to enable the children to go on class trips, purchase bursaries, and playground equipment. Therefore, it be resolved that the members of the House of Assembly congratulate the Riverport Elementary School on their fundraising efforts and thank all those who assisted in making this year's event a successful one. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Timberlea Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll be asking for waiver and passage without debate. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Terrence Bay is recognized throughout Nova Scotia for his athletic accomplishments in the game of fastball, and whereas this recognition and these accomplishments are the results of the valuable efforts by coaches such as Wayne Manuel, and whereas Wayne Manuel's dedication to the game of fastball was acknowledged on Saturday, May 8th at the Terrence Bay Fire Hall, therefore be it resolved that the Nova Scotia Legislature congratulate and thank Wayne Manuel of Terrence Bay for his commitment and dedication to the game of fastball. I ask for waiver and passage without debate, Mr. Speaker.
Waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Foxbrook Run was held again this year by the Pictou County Roadrunners Club, this time in memory of longtime Roadrunner Club President Fred Lays. And whereas Fred was terribly ill last year and abiding by his respects of the family, the run was not held in 2003. And whereby nearly 70 runners took part in the 5-kilometer and 10-kilometer fun run, with all organizers being absolutely thrilled with the show of respect and memory for the late Fred Lays. Therefore, be it resolved that MLAs commend the initiative of the organizers of the Pictou County Roadrunners Club for their testament and memory of their late president. And I ask for waiver of notice.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas coal-fired generators are the most harmful to both the environment and human health, and whereas they release mercury, which is a cancer-causing substance, and sulfuric acid, which causes breathing problems. And whereas high pollution levels are known to aggravate respiratory symptoms that cause asthma. Therefore, be it resolved that this government design legislation enacting specific limits for emissions that will protect our environment and our health. And I request waiver and passage without debate.
Waiver. Here no. The notice is tabled. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas a key component of volunteerism is the desire to give of yourself by helping others, and whereas by helping others, volunteers offer their own knowledge and strength while learning new things and growing both personally and professionally, and whereas the Lunenburg Queens Volunteer Extravaganza was held in April 2004 at White Point Beach Resort in order to assist volunteers with information about issues such as recruitment, fundraising, and risk management. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House express their sincere thanks not only to the volunteers who took the time to organize this event, but also to those who volunteer on numerous projects throughout the year in all of our communities. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas support of the arts is a measure of truly great society, and whereas the Ham government cut funding to the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia by 10% this year, and whereas they also cut funding to the Nova Scotia Museum sites this year, therefore be it resolved that the members of this House condemn the Ham government for its continued lack of support to the cultural community in this province. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? Here are several noes. Notice is tabled. The honourable member Timberlea Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be asking for waiver and passage without debate. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas youth soccer teams will compete on May 14th, 15th, and 16th in a tournament in memory of Sheila and Stephanie Alt, and whereas the Alt family are legendary for their involvement with their commitment to the sport of soccer, And whereas this annual tournament, sponsored by the Halifax County United, is a popular event with area youth, therefore be it resolved that the Nova Scotia Legislature extend best wishes to the organizers and teams participating in the Sheila and Stephanie Alt Memorial Soccer Tournament. I ask for waiver and passage without debate, Mr. Speaker.
Request for waivers, is agreed? All those in favor say aye. Countermanded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the month of April is always a special time, even more special when the Canadian Cancer Society volunteers get out and raise funds for cancer research through selling of daffodils. And whereas two groups got together in April in Pictou County to help the Pictou County chapter of the Canadian Cancer Society sell daffodils. And whereas the two groups who so ably assisted the Pictou County chapter of the Canadian Cancer Society were the Loretta Kappa chapter of Beta Sigma Phi. Therefore, be it resolved that MLAs compliment the efforts of these volunteers who work so diligently to ensure the necessary funds are made available for research and programs into this killer disease. Mr. Speaker, I ask for a waiver.
Request for waivers, is agreed? All those in favor say aye. Countermanded, nay. Motion is carried. Orders of the day or questions put by members. Question period begin at 2:47 and will end at 4:17. The honourable member for Halifax Fairview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this week the government tried to downplay its reputation as the most secretive government in the country. Unfortunately, the facts just continue to speak for themselves. The rate filings by insurance companies used to be public information, but we have learned only this week that that is no longer the case. We've been told that we can file a Freedom of Information request for these filings or just wait until the Insurance Review Board makes a decision. So my question to the Minister responsible for insurance is how can this government possibly justify any attempt to hide rate applications from the public?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure the honourable member that while rate applications may be kept on a restricted list until such time as the determination has been made as to regard to the rate, the rates themselves will certainly be made public.
Member for Halifax Fairview on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if the minister gets it. The rate filings used to be public so the public could see them before a decision was made, and now the people of Nova Scotia are going to have the right to see the rate filings after a decision has been made. Next door in New Brunswick, we have an insurance review body that is fighting to keep this information public. Recently, in a court decision, the New Brunswick courts upheld the New Brunswick insurance regulator's decision that all of this information should be public. So my question for the minister responsible for insurance is what will it take for this government to put Nova Scotians' interests ahead of the interests of insurance companies and recognize that it's in everybody's best interest that this information be public?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the government has acted in the best interests of the consumers all the way along with this piece with regards to automobile insurance. Our present situation in Nova Scotia nowhere near compares with that in New Brunswick, which has got a system that has not realized any significant savings for consumers. The motoring public in Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker, since last November, which is a short, 6 months ago approximately, have received $55 million in refunds. Mr. Speaker, in New Brunswick, they have not even come close to matching that.
I'll member Halifax Fairview for your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, that minister continues to live in some kind of insurance fantasy land because in response to serious issues about openness, he responds with facts that are not true and are irrelevant anyway, even if they were true. Mr. Speaker, as of July, insurance companies will be able to file new rates that will take effect on November 1st. But this government has changed the policy, and now consumers will not even be aware of those new rate filings until the decision has already been made. The only people The only people that gain from this decision are the insurance companies. My question to the minister, why does this government continue to side with insurance companies instead of being on the side of Nova Scotia drivers and their families?
The Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member talks about fantasy land. The honourable member is living in Disneyland, I think, if he can't be aware of the fact that the consumer, the auto insurers, people in Nova Scotia, those who are driving automobiles, have been the recipients of $55 million in rebates, Mr. Speaker, and that is something that has been achieved within the short space of 6 months.
Now, member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health, Mr. Speaker. This year, some 38,500 seniors will be paying the full premium for seniors' pharmacare. And while an additional 750 will be exempt from paying the premium, the fact of the matter is this government will collect an additional $1.2 million or $2.1 million from those seniors who are currently paying the full premium. Mr. Speaker, some senior couples are now paying $652 more today than when this government took power. Shame. My question to the minister, could the minister please outline what benefits these 38,500 seniors will receive as a result of the increase that they have to pay in the premium?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I can tell the honourable member and I can tell the House that Nova Scotia has one of the most comprehensive seniors pharmacare programs in this country, and Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to support it and ensure that it is that comprehensive.
Now, member Glace Bay, on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the minister what benefits they would receive. And I note, Mr. Speaker, that in a press release issued on February 27th this year, this government would be investing some $12 million in seniors' pharmacare. Yet the budget that was passed yesterday shows an increase of only about $6.3 million in the seniors' pharmacare, about half of what the government said it would invest. Mr. Speaker, that seems to be a pretty large gap. Either they're collecting more from seniors or they're letting on that the plan to have some considerable changes under the seniors' pharmacare program. So my question to the minister is, could he please inform us today whether there are plans to delist some of the drugs that are covered in the seniors' pharmacare program to make up for that $6 million gap in the program?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And what I can tell the honourable member is that our plans are to ensure that Nova Scotia continues to have the most comprehensive seniors pharmacare program in this country.
Now, member for Glace Bay, and your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, what we have here is a government that is gouging seniors with skyrocketing pharmacare fees. We have a minister who said there would be a $12 million investment in pharmacare. In fact, he's $6 million short. And we have a so-called official opposition who are not willing to stand up for the 38,500 seniors who saw their premiums increase in this province.
Order, please. Order, please. Now, member Glace Bay, and your final supplementary, please.
My question from the new official opposition will be to the minister. My question is, what is this minister doing to ensure that seniors are protected against skyrocketing pharmacare costs?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Far be it for me, Mr. Speaker, to be the mediator between the two groups opposite, Mr. Speaker. But I can tell the honourable member and I can tell all Nova Scotians that we have one of the most comprehensive, and we do the most comprehensive in Atlantic Canada insurance program for seniors. We will continue to have that program, Mr. Speaker, and the commitments we've made to seniors will be met.
Order, please. Order, please. Just like to remind all my members to keep their supplementary questions short if they could, please. It's infringing upon the rights of the other members for questions. Now, member for Halifax Fairview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government said its new insurance review board would protect the public interest and build public confidence. This government can't be serious about that because the people who actually pay the rates, Nova Scotia drivers and their families, won't get a chance to see or comment on those rates until after a decision has been made. So my question to the minister responsible for auto insurance is how on earth is the public, or how on earth are public interest advocates supposed to comment on proposed new rates if rate applications are hidden until after the decision is made?
Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the proof of the pudding is in the eating with regard to auto insurance. The public of Nova Scotia at the present time are quite satisfied with what this government has done and will continue to do.
Now, member for Halifax Fairview, and your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, when Nova Scotia Power wants to raise its rates, it has to go to the Utility and Review Board. Information is made public because we all agree that consumers have a right to know if their rates will go up and why. But unlike other regulated industries, the insurance industry in this province is about to get special treatment. Drivers won't hear about new rates until it's too late. So my question to the minister responsible for insurance is, in New Brunswick, it's an insurance company that's trying to keep rates hidden. Why is it that in Nova Scotia, it's the government trying to do the same thing?
Honourable Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the government isn't trying to hide any information. The users of insurance in the province of Nova Scotia realize what's happened to their premiums over the past 6 months, and they're eminently satisfied.
Now, member Halifax Fairview, and your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, if that minister thinks that he solved the auto insurance problem, just wait till the fall, Mr. Speaker. Just wait till the fall. Mr. Speaker, it is precisely because the public was able to see the rate filings that they were able to put pressure on the government, that they were able to demand fairer and lower auto insurance rates. So my question to the minister responsible for insurance is very simple. When is the minister going to remember whose side he's supposed to be on?
Deputy Premier. The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, there's no doubt which side of the government there's no side of there's no argument which side of the argument we're on with regard to the auto insurance, Mr. Speaker, and that's achieving the best balance for the motoring public. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member over there, the member of doom and gloom, I think should stop threatening about should stop threatening about what's going to happen in the fall. I'm sure that he'll be quite surprised when he sees what the rates are after the review by the Insurance Review Board.
Now, a member for Halifax Clayton Park.
That's fine. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the minister responsible for the Nova Scotia Gaming Corporation. There have been numerous studies, both here in Nova Scotia and elsewhere, that show that without a doubt, VLTs are highly addictive and damaging to the lives of many people, and many here in Nova Scotia. Despite the fact that there have been VLTs in Nova Scotia since 1991, and since 1998, we've been spending money to research the problem of gambling, there are still no firm numbers available on the social costs associated with VLT addictions. We know that people are losing their homes, families, jobs, even their lives. All studies have pointed to the fact that they're highly addictive. So my question to the minister responsible for the Gaming Corporation is, after all these studies, what immediate and concrete plans do you have to help VLT addicts in our province and to minimize the risk of more people becoming addicted?
The Honourable Minister responsible for Nova Scotia Gaming, Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as the honourable member knows, the Gaming Corporation had a chance to speak to the committee this morning, and they talked about those very things, about the need for responsible gambling, the need to make machines and less addictive, and indeed they shared some of the vision that the government and they have in terms of developing a gaming strategy. Mr. Speaker, we are moving in that direction, and that's what this government is doing.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park, on your first supplementary.
Thank you very much. The gaming strategy that the minister refers to will not happen immediately. It takes time. I think Nova Scotians want to see some immediate steps taken to alleviate the damage and the potential damage to new people gaming in Nova Scotia. At the Public Accounts Committee, we heard repeatedly that the Gaming Corporation wants to get direction from Nova Scotians and more consultation. Would a plebiscite then, Mr. Minister, not be the right way to go to get more feedback from Nova Scotians in a hurry?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And there's a whole variety of ways to get feedback from the public. There's education processes that we have. There's the issue of having discussions and various other things. Mr. Speaker, as the Gaming Corporation said, those are the directions that they're moving to get the feedback from public to develop this gaming strategy.
Order, please. The member for Halifax Clayton Park on your final supplementary.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, last week in a scrum, the Premier said the problem is being studied, but he couldn't make a move against the machines until he sees hard evidence of harm. Well, Mr. Speaker, there are an estimated 6,400 addicts in the province in 1998, and heaven knows how many there are today. There's been numerous studies, and I believe that my question for the minister will be, with 6,400 addicts and many, many more people affected as a result, what more evidence could they possibly need before VLTs are acted upon?
The Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as the honourable member indicated in the discussions at Public Accounts, we do recognize that that is a serious problem that we have to work with. Speaker, that's why, for example, that the Office of Health Promotion has been developing programs. That's why we have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week counselors at helplines, so we can work on some of these problems. Mr. Speaker, we do know that this problem has to be worked on, and this government, along with the Gaming Corporation, is working on its gaming strategy that we'll be moving on quite quickly.
Thank you. Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is going to be for the Minister of Service Nova Scotia. He may not remember, but the Premier of this province took a strong position in this House in 1996 when gas prices went from 43 cents to 61.9 cents a litre. The now Premier demanded action to protect Nova Scotians from rapid escalations in gas prices. Curiously, the Liberal government at the time said it was a federal issue. The NDP has presented plans to limit the price spikes and to give back the windfall taxes you're earning. So my question for the minister is the same question that the now Premier asked. I wonder if the minister would mind relaying to the House what measures he's taking to protect the interests of Nova Scotians, particularly in the matter of rapid escalations in gas prices.
The Honourable Minister of Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We intend to bring forward measures to this House in the very near future. The member opposite will find out then.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party has never been afraid of NDP ideas to achieve a better deal for today's families. No. One of the NDP proposals would ensure greater competition in the sale of gasoline. Yeah. Over the years, we have introduced legislation which would require that gas be sold to independent gas stations at the lowest price paid by oil companies to its own stations. The current spike in gasoline prices was not the first, and unless the government takes meaningful action, it will, of course, not be the last. So my question is this: how is the minister going to deliver on his own commitments to ensure greater competition and therefore overall lower prices among gas retailers?
Now the Minister of Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, our commitment is to protect the interests of Nova Scotians. We will work towards a solution that will protect those Nova Scotians' interests and to ensure that they're treated fairly and reasonably in the market, and we will be bringing forward measures in the very near future that will lay out exactly what it is we intend to do, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your final supplementary.
Well, we've heard it all before, Mr. Speaker. Work toward, go forward, study. Well, people in Nova Scotia are tired of this. The forecast is for record high prices all summer, and for 8 years, government's answer has been that they're studying the problem. So my question is this: how can it take so long to stop studying and start taking action to limit skyrocketing gas prices that will have a real effect where it matters in Nova Scotians' pocketbooks?
The Honourable Minister of Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, in January of this year, I instructed my staff to begin the process of analyzing the situation that we expected would happen over the next number of months. Our staff did an extensive analysis with industry and key stakeholders and others to determine what would be in the best interest of Nova Scotians. I can say to the member opposite and to all Nova Scotians that we will be bringing forward measures that will protect Nova Scotia's interest and measures that I believe that will receive the support of this House, and I hope that will, because it will provide Nova Scotians with a great deal of certainty with respect to fuel prices, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Education. Mr. Speaker, community-based learning networks across the province help adults acquire the literacy skills they need to compete for jobs, gain self-esteem, self-sufficiency, and able to help their own children in school. The Annapolis County Learning Network is one example, with a committed volunteer board, base funding of less than $80,000 a year from the Department of Education, employs 2 teachers and an administrator, provides level 1 and 2 literacy courses, offers a family literacy program, conducts much-needed research, continually writes proposals, and searches for additional funding sources to make up an annual funding deficit in the area of $60,000. Fortunately, Mr. Speaker, the Annapolis County Learning Network does not know from one year to the next if their base funding from the province will be provided. My question to the Minister.
Order, please. There's too much noise in the chamber. I ask the honourable members if they have to speak to go outside the chamber, please. The honourable member of Kings West.
My question to the Minister of Education, will the Minister make a 5-year base funding commitment to the Annapolis County Learning Network so that it can continue to provide its valuable services to the people in this area?
Honourable Minister of Education.
I know, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member realizes that there are other adult high schools in the province besides the Valley, and they are all valuable. And I know that his question would include the others as well if he had to restate it. Anyway, I want to tell you that we are committed to providing quality programs and services for adult learners in Nova Scotia. And Mr. Speaker, in our budget, you'll see that there is an increase in the line for adult education.
The honourable member for Kings West on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, please allow me to read a brief excerpt from one of about 20 letters the MLA for Annapolis has received from participants in the program. I've been out of school for 7 years and feel strongly that this is my last possible opportunity to finish and receive my proper education. I have children who depend on me, and I depend on this course to help my children later on. The jobs that are available require grade 12. What will we do without this opportunity? Mr. Speaker, there are rumors that even if the Annapolis County Learning Network receives base funding for next year, they may see a reduction in their base amount. My question, will the Minister commit today in this House that the ACLN will not see a reduction in its base funding for next year?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for bringing the adult learning to the floor of the House, because it does provide a valuable contribution to education in Nova Scotia. And I also recognize what the honourable member has said, it being the school of last chance for a number of people, and it does fulfill that function. We provide about $6.4 million in annual funding to 30 community literacy organizations, and which would include the Nova Scotia Community College, the University of St. Anne, and the regional school boards. Mr. Speaker, this government is committed to adult education.
Kings West on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, providing basic literacy training to adults in Nova Scotia is essential, and it's sad to think that the finances of this province are in such a state that this government cannot make a commitment for modest funding for adult literacy training. This board is simply growing tired of raising $60,000 a year to supplement the program. My question, Mr. Minister, I will ask again for you to make a 5-year stable funding commitment to the Annapolis County Learning Network to allow it to continue to provide much-needed services.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, the government continues, and as I've said before, to recognize the important service that the adult literacy networks provide to many Nova Scotians, and we will continue to support it.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Economic Development. Last week, we asked the Minister why the government is abandoning the 100 former Britex employees and their families. In this House, he stated that the liquidator and NSBI continue to hold open the option of accepting a competitive going concern bid. My office has just learned that a going concern bid was submitted today by 2 former managers at the plant to save these jobs and to continue to operate the plant. Yet, the liquidation process continues, putting the competitive bids in jeopardy. So my question is this: will the Minister confirm for the members of this House today that his government and NSBI are still accepting bids to save the plant and to save these jobs?
Hear, hear. Mr. Economic Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And indeed, those were my responses last week. And as the honourable member will note, I said time was growing very short. NSBI's receiver accepted a bid last week, late on the machinery, and they are proceeding to the court action to have it approved.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the government forced Britex into liquidation, and with it will go the jobs and economic spin-off from the plant. Worse still, the government is refusing to go to bat for the employees. Yeah, right. Most will get only 1 week severance and have no real job prospects. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we are told that a recent job posting at the local home hardware store elicited more than 100 applications. Yet even while offers continue to come in, the government continues to go forward with its liquidation of the plant. So, to give the most recent bidder a fair chance, my question is this: will the Minister commit today to put the liquidation process on hold while the government staff evaluates today's going concern bid?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as the member well knows, as I stated last week, the deadline was extended several months for bids so that all bids could be considered, and a significant length of time was made available for any and all groups, including the employees, as well as interests across the entire continent. That proved unsuccessful, and NSBI, who is the main creditor, along with the receiver, has accepted a bid.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on your final supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is actually a shameful response. The loss of 100 jobs in a region like this is comparable to the loss of thousands of jobs in the metropolitan area. These employees have very specific skills and are without any real or comparable job prospects in this region or even within Nova Scotia. So I want to ask the Minister, what concrete steps will the Minister take, if any, to ensure a fair and immediate assessment of today's bid to save these 100 jobs at Britex?
Economic Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as the honourable member knows, it's an extremely unfortunate situation when a company piles up a massive amount of debt and cannot meet their operating line, and in excess of $4 million was owed at this particular plant. It went into receivership by its main creditors. At that point, the process is the receiver then looks for other options, and every possible opportunity in time lengthening and exploring any possible number of bids was conducted to see if there was a viable business plan that could go forward. Unfortunately, that process was exhausted. There was none, and the receiver has moved and accepted a bid.
Now, a member for Richmond.
Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotians are starting to question the future of the offshore industry here in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotians are also questioning whether this government actually has a plan to develop the future of the offshore industry. Speaker, 2 years ago, following the helpful intervention by the Premier in the dispute with Newfoundland over the Laurentian Subbasin, Nova Scotians were embarrassed to see Newfoundland take the vast majority of jurisdiction over the Laurentian Subbasin. At the time, the Minister of the day said it really didn't matter because there was only one exploration license on the Nova Scotia side of the Laurentian Subbasin. My question to the Minister is, could the Minister of Energy indicate to the House how many exploratory licenses have been issued by his government since April 2nd, 2002?
The Honourable Minister of Energy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I do want to echo the member's concern that we all share, and that's the continued exploration and development of our offshore, as was highlighted by all parties present at the OTC in Houston. And in terms of exploratory license, the Department of Energy is working to not only look at new activities, but the block in question is under review with those officials as the Government of Canada has transferred jurisdiction to Newfoundland and Labrador. We've spoken to that province and are working through that process. There's 17 blocks that are subject to negotiation, and I'll provide the member with full details and current status.
I'll member for Richmond on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the answer to the question of how many new exploratory licenses have been issued since April 2nd, 2002 is simple. None. There hasn't been any, which is again leading to the question of what plan does this government actually have for development of the offshore. Now, our good neighbours over to the east in Newfoundland on May 4th, 2004, Newfoundland government announced 8 new exploration licenses for the Laurentian sub-basin. Nova Scotia, none. So my question very simply to the Minister, does Nova Scotia intend to issue any new exploratory licenses, or is it actually waiting for Newfoundland to develop the Nova Scotia side of the sub-basin?
The Honourable Minister of Energy.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to reiterate a fact that's been well known in this province, and that is we have $1.56 billion in work commitments on 56 blocks. There are a number of blocks that are currently under review with corporate interests that want to look and see an opportunity for exploration and development. Our exploration plan for this year is on target. We hope to exceed that, even in the midst of other uncertainties and disappointing news such as Weymouth. So we're moving forward, and the block in question regarding the sub-basin is under review to realign that, and we continue to work for development on both sides of the boundary.
The Honourable Member for Richmond on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, this minister talks a lot about the future of the offshore, but there is no action. And no, he didn't answer the question whether he's waiting for Newfoundland to develop our side. Speaker, the fact is that there has not been one significant discovery since this government has taken office. There have been no new projects since the Sable project. And finally, we now hear that there are no new exploratory licenses being issued for the last 2 years. My final supplementary is, when is this Minister of Energy going to act and allow for more exploration off our coast, especially in the Laurentian sub-basin?
The Honourable Minister of Energy.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as the member knows, we've had some very positive news in our offshore, both with the Marguerite and the Marco wells, as Encana looks at its redevelopment plan with regards to Deep Panook, which actually involves Deep Cohasset, a whole new field with significant gas pay. It also doesn't take into account the efforts by Marathon, which we've seen in positive development with the Annapolis well, and their commitment to move forward this year, this June, in exploring on the Crimson well. ExxonMobil's moving forward. The industry's moving forward. Maybe the Liberal Party could move forward with the rest of this province.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Alliance for Sharps and Safety Needle Stick Prevention has been working across the country to help identify and eliminate the risk of needle stick injury for healthcare workers. These injuries put workers at risk from contracting diseases such as hepatitis and HIV. The Alliance has developed a draft occupational health and safety regs that would deal with these potential lethal injuries. But unfortunately, they haven't been able to get any agreement from the government to implement them, Mr. Speaker. In fact, they can't even get a meeting with the minister. And I'll table those regulations here today, Mr. Speaker. So I want to ask the Minister of Health, why haven't you met with the Alliance? And will you commit today to meet with them and discuss these regulations with a view of implementing them in this province?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not personally aware of a request to meet with me. Very difficult for me to commit to a set of regulations that I have not seen.
I'll member Cape Breton Centre on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll assure him that he was asked and no answer was coming forward, Mr. Speaker. The Alliance recommends that every workplace there is a risk of exposure should have an exposure control plan to develop with the input of frontline healthcare workers, Mr. Speaker. And the use of safety-engineered sharp devices are approved by Health Canada and have been mandated in each of these facilities, Mr. Speaker. They recommend that clearly established protocols are vital in dealing with needle stick injuries. Mr. Speaker, we have seen over the past few weeks the clear need for provincial protocols relating to surgical instruments, Mr. Speaker. So I want to ask the Minister to agree to mandate exposure control plans, and will he work with the DHAs to develop a province-wide protocols relating to sharps and sharp injuries?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell the honourable member that we continue to work with the DHAs on ensuring that our workplaces are as safe as they can be. And Mr. Speaker, we do that with a recognition that we always need to be aware of changes and potential changes that can become available in the workplace, and we make every effort to remain up to date.
The Honourable Member, Cape Breton Centre, on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to advise you that nurses receive an estimated 50% of all needle stick injuries in Canada, and as many as 1,800 of those accidents happen here in this province, Mr. Speaker. Most of these accidents, as all accidents, are preventable. Cost estimates to fully implement these type of regulations would be less than $500,000. Mr. Speaker, nurses and other healthcare professionals deserve protection in their workplace. So I want to ask this minister again, when can healthcare professionals in this province expect the government to make this investment in their safety? Will he commit today to funding, and will he start working with the DHAs to begin integrating these safety devices in hospitals and other institutions?
Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We continue to work with the DHAs every day to ensure that we're doing our utmost to have a safe workplace. And, Mr. Speaker, we continuously monitor that which is available to assist us in making that workplace. And I can tell the honourable member we'll continue to make ourselves aware of what's happening with respect to safety in the workplace.
Now, member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question through you is for the Minister responsible for African Nova Scotian Affairs. Mr. Speaker, last night the chair of the Monitoring Committee, established following a 1974 human rights complaint about the failure of Nova Scotia's education system in 4 Halifax County Black communities, reported to the Halifax Regional School Board that things are getting worse for African Nova Scotian students and parents. She pointed to systemic problems in the system, many that have been highlighted in the 10-year-old Black Learners Advisory Committee report. The Black report and advocates are saying that we need more resources to ensure that Black students receive a decent education in Nova Scotia. So my question to the Minister of the Office of African Nova Scotian Affairs is, how do you plan to respond to the concerns raised by the Monitoring Committee at last night's school board meeting?
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question from the member opposite, and I will tell the member opposite that our government has invested more money in this budget and in the last budget to address recommendations in the Black report. We will continue to support that report. We will continue to work with the association case to ensure that the report is prioritized and we move forward on a step-by-step basis to implement those recommendations to benefit African Nova Scotians, Mr. Speaker.
I'll member Halifax Needham on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this government needs to give the education of African Nova Scotian students a higher priority. Mr. Speaker, at the step-by-step rate that the minister refers to, that this government is taking to implementing the Black report, a child who started school when that report came out will have graduated by the time that the recommendations of this report are implemented. So my question for the minister is, why is it taking your government so long to implement the recommendations of the Black report?
Minister of Service, Nova Scotia Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I would disagree with the member opposite. Our government is very proactive and moving forward at a rapid pace to implement the recommendations in the case report, the Black report. The case organization has helped us develop a work plan to move forward, and we will continue to do so with the Department of Education and other departments to ensure that those recommendations are dealt with in a timely and reasonable manner. And I can assure the member opposite and all Nova Scotians that our government takes the recommendations made in that report very seriously and are working very progressively to get that report implemented in a fair and reasonable way.
Y'all member Halifax Needham on your final supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, I hardly think that 10 years is moving forward at a rapid pace, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have a 10-year-old black report that sadly is gathering dust on a shelf, and we now have an Office of African Nova Scotian Affairs where we haven't seen a great deal of action. And that could be because the amount of staff for that office is very low, Mr. Speaker. 1 full-time staff member and 4 part-timers. So my question to the minister is, why is it that so few staff in your division were designated for full-time employment and for such important responsibilities?
Honourable Minister of Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, to the member opposite, as I indicated during questioning in the estimates, that our office is in the infancy stage. We have only begun bringing it up to speed. We intend to hire more than 1 full-time staff. When we bring forward our business plan, it will show that there are a number of full-time staff. The issue the member opposite is talking about is the fact that many of these staff will be hired partway through the year. But I want to remind the member opposite that our government has invested over $4 million in the Black Report. We are the government that was able to provide opportunities for African Nova Scotians to have a voice at the table in the school boards of Nova Scotia, and we are progressive on this matter, Mr. Speaker, and I believe if the member opposite would speak to the African Nova Scotians, they will find that they are very satisfied with the direction our government is going with respect to this file, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Environment. Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, the Department of Environment and Labour extended the moratorium on applying biosolids to land for another 2 weeks, meaning May the 15th. New approvals for land applications will not be issued until the government finalizes its policy on this matter. Mr. Speaker, a press release dated April the 29th stated that the extension will allow the government more time to consider public comments and scientific evidence. The 15th is Saturday, Mr. Speaker, and the government has yet to make a decision. My question to the minister is, will this moratorium on applying biosolids to the land be extended beyond May the 15th?
Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for the question. Certainly the moratorium was extended. We knew we wanted to take as much time as was practical to ensure that we listened to Nova Scotians and we listened to people who had issues, also to ensure that we gathered as much scientific information as was possible, and then to assess what would happen with the moratorium.
The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the draft guidelines released in March of this year will allow only treated sludges that meet specific biological and chemical criteria to be applied to the land. Has the government chosen to select the safest method available for the treating and neutralizing of biosolids? This decision is imperative to the contractors who must safely dispose of these solids and to the residents of Nova Scotia who must be assured of their safety in regards to their land application. Mr. Speaker, my question to the minister is, what has the government done to address the environmental concerns that are coming out and other provinces that are coming out with more proactive approach in treating of biosolids?
Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We certainly have done a review, and we've looked at other jurisdictions. We've actually looked North American-wide as well as worldwide to ensure that we have information gathered with the latest scientific technology to take care of contractors who are going to handle this material, certainly to individuals who will be working around it, as well as to the environment and to all Nova Scotians.
Now, member for Victoria the Lakes on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the minister has stated that the extension will allow the government to finalize its policy on land application. 6 other provinces, including Alberta, are taking the approach of ceasing to use land application. Is this province taking into consideration a central disposal site comparable to the move to solid waste generation to landfills, which are being centrally located? So my final question to the minister is, Mr. Speaker, will the minister tell this House where is this policy and at what stage of completion it may be in?
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We certainly are committed to coming up with the best possible policy for Nova Scotians to ensure that everybody is safe, to ensure that we protect the environment. We're looking at all technologies currently, and we have committed to continue to look at any new technologies that will come forward, any new scientific data that will come forward to ensure that we can improve as we move forward.
The Honourable Member for Timberlea Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question through you is to the Minister of Education. Mr. Speaker, last night the Chester District Home and School Association unanimously passed a resolution calling for the South Shore District School Board to resign. At issue is the transfer of 3 very popular school teachers at the Chester District School. The Home and School Association faxed their letter of concern to me, and I was speaking to one of the activist parents this morning. I'd like to table that letter for the record. Clearly, the Home and School Association and members of this community have lost faith in the system. My question to the Minister of Education is, what have you done to address the concerns of this community about their school?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question, and I do know that the situation down there is something that is of some concern to some residents of the community, and I can also tell the House that the member for Chester St. Margaret's has kept me abreast of that situation. However, as the honourable member will know, that is a personnel matter, and it is between those who are affected and the school board. And my understanding is that whatever happened down there was consistent with the provisions of the collective agreement.
Timberlea Prospect on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, the 15th of April, I attended a public meeting where concerns were expressed about the school, about the principal, and about these teachers. The Home and School Association says there have been personality difficulties with a history. 400 people have signed a petition to bring these 3 teachers back. So my question to the Minister is, when will you investigate this situation and report back to the community?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I've actually spoken to a couple of the parents about that, and we've received a fair bit of communication in our office about that, and I know there have been letters. If they have not been responded to yet, they soon will be, and indeed members of my staff have spoken to individuals who approached me about this. I've also spoken to school board members about it, and I've also had the opportunity a week ago to meet the replacement principal. It's any time you have a situation like that, Mr. Speaker, there is tension. What I can say is that the matter is being handled. Whatever is happening is consistent with the provision of the teachers' collective agreement.
I'll member Timberlea Prospect on your final supplementary.
Well, I must remind the Minister that this school board answers directly to you, sir. Throughout this entire ordeal, the residents of the community have wondered, where is the leadership from the Department of Education? Where is the leadership from the Minister of Education? A unanimous vote of non-confidence in a board and the Director of Education should cause you great concern. These parents and the members of this Home and School Association are looking forward to meeting with you when they come to this House at a future date. Are you prepared to meet with them when they do come to Halifax?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not aware. I have not received any communication from anything that happened last night. When and if I get that communication, we will deal with it in the normal way.
The honourable member for Richmond.
Mr. Speaker, the cost of gasoline is entering a crisis phase. Goods and services are being affected. Nova Scotia families, truck drivers, taxi drivers, courier companies, and bus companies are all being affected. Tourism this summer will clearly suffer as a result of our high gas prices in Nova Scotia. The buses that take our children to school are going to cost school boards more, costing taxpayers more. The Premier has indicated that he has a plan that will be released shortly. But unless this plan results in a price reduction, the Premier might as well put his plan on the shelf. My question to the Premier is could the Premier indicate whether his so-called plan will result in a reduction in gasoline prices and provide immediate relief to Nova Scotia consumers?
The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I refer that to the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, what I'll tell the member opposite and all Nova Scotians is we believe this is a very serious matter. We believe government needs to step in and do something, and that we will provide Nova Scotians with short-term solution as well as an opportunity for long-term lasting solution, Mr. Speaker. The member opposite will see that when we bring it forward, and it will be very soon.
Honourable Member for Richmond on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Premier committed to take action months ago. Every day that goes by, every hour that goes by, is more money out of the pockets of Nova Scotia taxpayers and Nova Scotia consumers, something which apparently this government takes much joy in doing each and every day. Speaker, one way for Nova Scotians to see immediate relief is for the government to reduce its taxation at times when the price of gas is so high. The other is for the government to encourage industry to lower their prices by also demanding that the industry justify why the prices are so high. So my question to the Premier, who made this commitment to Nova Scotians to take action, is will the Premier commit to either rescind or freeze the 2-cent increase on the price of gas that his government imposed 2 years ago, as long as gas prices remain so high in Nova Scotia?
The Honourable the Premier.
I refer that to the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, what I will say is that the issue of reducing gas tax has been studied by governments across this country, including the federal government, who in 1998, the Liberal caucus produced a report that took from other reports, 1996 report by the New Brunswick government that clearly showed that when the government reduced the price of tax and gas, the oil companies collected that tax and used it as profit. Mr. Speaker, there's no guarantee, according to this report, that that will benefit consumers. What we need to do, Mr. Speaker, is benefit consumers, not necessarily gas companies, and we intend to do that, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. I'd ask the Honourable Minister to table a copy of the document they just read from, please. The Honourable Member for Richmond on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, in 1998, the price of gas was not $1 for self-serve. Today, in 2004, under this government, it is. This government, every day that goes by, is continuing to allow Nova Scotians to pay an unfair price for gas in this province. It is the Premier himself who made this commitment to Nova Scotians, and yet he refuses today to answer questions on his own commitment. Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotians know that this government is clearly reaping in additional revenue as a result of these high gas prices. Their decision by this government to impose a 2-cent per litre increase in 2002 has added to the burden for Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, my question again to the Premier is, will the Premier commit today to providing relief to Nova Scotians immediately?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the Nova Scotia government spends all of its gas tax on the roads and bridges of Nova Scotia. And this is something that will continue to occur. I would remind the member opposite that Ottawa collects $140 million each year of gasoline tax in the province of Nova Scotia, returning a very, very small amount of that money each year. The member opposite might do a great service to the people of Nova Scotia if he could convince his federal counterparts to return more of that money to Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Put it in tax cuts rather than on roads, so that's no use.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question's for the Minister of Community Services. Mr. Speaker, the province is in a battle with the federal government to recoup $900,000 it gave social assistance clients for food following Hurricane Juan. The federal government says the clients should have had insurance, but the head of emergency measures stated in the media, and I'll table the article, quote, "My heavens, if a person has to go to a food bank to eat, if they're having problems finding enough money for groceries, those might be people who simply can't afford to buy insurance," end of quote. My question to the Minister of Community Services, will you also admit that the food budget for social assistance recipients leaves them in a constant struggle to feed their families?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the first thing that I would like to acknowledge is the members pointed out that when Hurricane Juan struck, it was right after the monthly checks went out. A lot of community services clients lost a portion of their monthly groceries, which perhaps were in the freezer. And we took the right steps, regardless of what the federal government does. We did the right thing by our clients.
Now, member Dartmouth South, Portland Valley, and your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the minister responsible for emergency measures also made a comment on the federal government's arguments in the same article. He said, in regards to the claim for the food assistance, and I quote, "I would say it's somewhat cold-hearted on their part," end of quote. Hurricane Juan only added to the burden families on social assistance face month after month, living on inadequate food and shelter allowances. So I ask the minister, if the federal government's stand is cold-hearted, what words does he think best describes the continual cycle of poverty clients of his department face every day?
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I thank the member opposite for this question. This is something which was discussed at some length during the estimates. There's a number of approaches I could take to it, but I think that the most important thing, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to breaking the cycle of poverty is to empower those clients to better their circumstances. That's why, with the entry of the Employment Support and Income Assistance Program on August the 1st of 2001, we increased the amount of employment support which is invested in our clients to the tune now of $17 million a year. That is a very significant investment, Mr. Speaker, and it's working, and it's helping break the cycle.
Now, member Dartmouth South, Portland Valley, and your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, that translates into $4 a person per check.
Wow.
A single person on employment support and income assistance is expected to live on a base amount of just over $400 a month. That's for shelter, food, clothing, medication, and transportation. My final question to the Minister of Community Services: when will you admit your amounts are grossly inadequate and that women, men, and children in this province are going hungry as a result?
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, just to put this in context, the amount that a social assistance recipient is entitled to receive would depend on their circumstances. So it would be appropriate just to put that on the record. And, Mr. Speaker, of course, the member opposite is aware that steps were taken to bring the food allowance up to the market basket measure as determined by Statistics Canada for a healthy diet. That was done in this budget. It is kicking in on October the 1st, and we're very pleased that that is happening this year. And I assure the member opposite that in future years, if the cost of living continues to rise, we will continue to look at this come the budget time.
Now the member for Kings West.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. A couple of weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Health in this House committed to supporting the South Shore DHA in recruiting anesthesiologists for the Queen's General Hospital. Mr. Speaker, the residents in Queens County live in fear because they have been let down by this government before. I note with interest, Mr. Speaker, the Department of Health has not listed anesthesiologists as a specialty they are currently trying to recruit for the South Shore region. Neither has the South Shore District Health Authority. Why has neither the Department of Health nor the South Shore District advertised for anesthesiologists?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the department works very closely with the district health authorities in determining the recruitment strategies. And Mr. Speaker, that would be a question that I would have to ask of the district health authority as to why that has not been identified.
Now, member for Kings West on your first supplementary.
Well, I'll tell you why, because in all likelihood, this government is not interested in filling this position at Queen's General. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the hidden message can be found on page 47 of your Health Matters when it states, "No one wants to see a service loss, but the focus must always be on how care can be delivered safely in a setting that provides the greatest benefits to a patient's health, reasonably close to home." Mr. Speaker, for the people of Queens County, this means that they don't need anesthesiologist at Queen's General, they can make do with the services provided at the South Shore Regional Hospital, however challenged this hospital may be in terms of capacity. My question to the Minister, will he confirm today that anesthesiologists will be recruited for the Queen's General Hospital?
Now, the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, what I will confirm and commit to is working with the DHA to fill the requirements that they feel they need in order to deliver health care for the area for which they are responsible.
Honourable member for Kings West on your final supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I note that it's not only anesthesiologists that is in question. I further understand that underutilized sterilization equipment has been transferred from Queen's General to South Shore Regional Hospital. Mr. Speaker, no wonder the people of Queens County are worried. Look at the great job this government did in hiding the situation with the Shelburne Youth Centre. My question to the Minister, will the Minister come clean and tell the people of Queens County what role Queen's General will play in the delivery of health care in this province? Will it be performing surgeries or not?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, the role that facility will play is a role that will be determined by the District Health Authority according to the business plans that they have put forward, Mr. Speaker. We will work with them to ensure that that facility is providing a range of services that are appropriate for the needs of that community.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Mr. Speaker, this year the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia experienced a 10% funding cut. In spite of this cut, the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia is expected to undertake an ambitious program to increase visitors, boost donations, and advance the promotion and marketing of this first-class venue. Quite an ambitious agenda when the gallery's funding is less than what it received 2 years ago, Mr. Speaker. So I asked the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage, how can his department expect the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia to meet its business plan with a 10% cut?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism and Culture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the Art Gallery certainly does play a vital role here, especially in HRM, but for the entire province. And of course, Mr. Speaker, good planning and management will be key in order to ensure the continued success of the Art Gallery.
I'll member Sackville-Cobequid on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia is a critical factor in promotion of the visual arts in this province. It helps promote Nova Scotia artists, and it also helps educate people of all ages in the visual arts. The number of visitors are down, and the Art Gallery identifies the need for an aggressive promotion and community outreach to get more people through their doors. So my question to the Minister, Mr. Speaker, is how can the Art Gallery promote itself with less money than the previous 2 years?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism and Culture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as the member well knows, our funding, which is certainly the base funding for the Art Gallery, is not the only funding that is used by the gallery, Mr. Speaker, and we will continue to work with the Art Gallery with respect to their business plan, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly feel that we're going to see a strong year for tourism in this province this summer, and I believe that the Art Gallery will play an integral role in that, Mr. Speaker.
Now, member from Sackville-Cobequid on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but the funding the government gives to the Art Gallery is very important to those people and important to continuing the great service they give to our province. The Nova Scotia museum sites experienced their second cut in a row, and museums are getting 7% less than 2 years ago, Mr. Speaker. So my question for the Minister, you boast of increases in cultural funding while museums and art galleries face budget cuts. So where is the money going?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism and Culture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and the members speaking with reference to particular museums, and I would ask them to table which ones, in fact, would be losing money this year, because, Mr. Speaker, I believe his facts are incorrect with respect to that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I would suggest that we will continue to work closely with the Art Gallery, and we have increased the funding for culture this year, Mr. Speaker, and we are making strategic investments which we believe will help grow the cultural industries in our province.
The Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. Last week, I asked the Minister of Health a question with regards to the future of Soldiers Memorial Hospital. As was expected, he indicated that was the responsibility of the DHAs to make those types of decisions, even though it is the Minister's responsibility to provide the overall vision as to the direction of health care in this province. Given that it is the Minister of Health's responsibility to define the vision for health care, could the minister please outline his vision as to the role of strong community hospitals like Soldiers Memorial will play as an acute care facility?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell the honourable member that the vision that this department has and that this government has is that the people of this province receive the level of health care that is appropriate to their needs and to the extent that we are able to provide it, given the resources that we have. And I can also tell the honourable member, Mr. Speaker, that we look forward to discussions with the Government of Canada to ensure that the funding commitments that are required from them will be forthcoming in the near future.
Member for Annapolis on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to do an introduction, if you don't mind. I'd like to introduce the Minister of Health to the Premier and the Premier to the Minister of Health, because money coming from Ottawa, according to the Premier, is going to tax cuts, and coming from the Minister of Health, it's going to health. I'd like to know which one it is. Coming from the Minister of Health.
Minister of Health.
That gentleman's normally confused.
Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member should be introduced to the federal Grits. He can get some money from them and get some answers.
Order, please. Order, please. The honourable member for Annapolis on the final supplementary.
Commitment that money will be into health, or is the Premier going to give it in a tax cut? I would like to be able to tell the people of Annapolis which it is. Are we going to close Soldiers Memorial, or are we going to come up with another tax scheme just prior to the next election? What is it?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, as I indicated to the House earlier this week, we have had some encouraging discussions with the Federal Minister of Health. I see, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister responsible for health promotions at the federal level is going to be speaking with me by telephone tomorrow. I'm encouraged. I don't know if I should be suspect about their sudden interest in my views with respect to health care, but I welcome the opportunity to share them.
The member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question will be for the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries. Mr. Speaker, I think painfully many of us in this House remember the cuts to the production technology branch of the Department of Agriculture that caused the formation of the Agricultural Development Institute, which has since morphed into AgriPoint International, Inc. AgriPoint, a Crown agency, operates as if it's a private business, but it receives $2.2 million in public funds each year, and we found out was not subject to freedom of information requests. Mr. Speaker, recently members of the AgriPoint board asked the executive of the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture to endorse its business plan. And I would say on the surface that's a very good thing, Mr. Speaker, except that they refuse to show them the business plan. So I asked the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, will he commit to table AgriPoint's business plan in this House by the end of the day tomorrow, considering he's the sole shareholder?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member opposite for the question. I will endeavour my best to have that business plan tabled in the House by tomorrow. Thank you.
Now, Member Hants East on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the minister. Mr. Speaker, the public should have access to business plans because lots of people in the agricultural sector have deep concerns about this arrangement. People like Lise LeBlanc, who owns a nutrient management company, now finds herself competing with AgriPoint for business. Ms. LeBlanc doesn't get government money to help her with her cost of doing business, but AgriPoint does. So, Mr. Speaker, I ask the minister, can he explain to Ms. LeBlanc why his government is funding the very competition that is threatening the future of her small business?
Now, Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, as the member opposite fully knows, that Ms. LeBlanc is a member of the AgriPoint board and therefore could ask that question directly to the board of directors.
Now, Member Hants East, on your final supplementary.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But the board of directors are not the shareholder. The minister's the shareholder, so he should answer the question. Mr. Speaker, members of the various commodity groups, including Pork Nova Scotia, say AgriPoint is of no advantage to them. In fact, the lines are blurring between what services are free and what services must be paid for by producers. So my final question to the minister, will he table an itemized list of services and their associated fees to producers in the House by tomorrow, along with the business plan?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I have previously committed that I will have the business plan in place. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned to the member from Annapolis yesterday, that we are working on this concern. There are some questions being raised by the Federation, by the Council of Leaders, and by others in respect to AgriPoint, and I can commit to this House that we're doing our best to address those problems. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Human Resources. You know, Mr. Speaker, we know that Nova Scotia highway workers have been forced to work without a collective agreement since October 2002, Mr. Speaker. 5 months ago, they applied to the Highway Workers Employee Relations Board for binding arbitration on the outstanding issues at the time, Mr. Speaker. Despite that decision of the Employee Relations Board, Mr. Speaker, this government continues to fight these valuable workers and won't give them what they had won by the Board of Employee Relations, Mr. Speaker. So I want to ask this minister, when will your government abide by its own legislation and the ruling of this board and proceed with binding arbitrations for these valuable workers in this great province?
The Honourable Minister of Human Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the Government of Nova Scotia's public policy on highway workers, these workers do provide an important service to all Nova Scotians. It's something that we definitely have looked at in the past and things that will come forward. The arbitration is something that is through a Supreme Court of Nova Scotia appeal from the Employees Relations Board, something that will, at that point in time, be determined. It will be up to them to come to us with whatever judgment comes out of that.
The member for Cape Breton Centre on your first supplementary.
She either refused to answer it or doesn't know the question. You know, Mr. Speaker, clearly, it's her department that is pursuing this issue. They have a set of rules. The workers are willing to live by it. They have a piece of the most restrictive labor legislation in this country. The workers are willing to live by it. But the government is not happy with just beating these employees. They want to run them into the ground, Mr. Speaker. So I want to ask this minister, why are you taking such delight in punishing these hard workers for the province of Nova Scotia?
The Honourable Minister of Human Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we share the interest of employees in having this situation resolved. And as soon as that decision comes forward, then we'll proceed with that decision.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton Centre on your final supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if she wants to resolve it, it's simple. Drop the proceeding. There's no magic here. It's just common sense. You treat your employees with respect. I'm going to ask the minister one more time. Respect these hard-working Nova Scotians and withdraw your suit.
Order, please. On Minister of Human Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I believe that the question was to respect highway workers in Nova Scotia, and this government does respect highway workers in Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, I'll stand up and vote no, as I did last night, Mr. Speaker.
For Nova Scotia.
Unlike the new side of the Tories over this side, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order, please. Order, please. Honourable Member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Justice. As we are all aware, Mr. Speaker, the Cape Breton Regional Municipality has been asking and seeking assistance for some time now to deal with the OxyContin issue. And despite the fact of some of the moans over there,